Hi there! My name is Liam, though some of you watching right now might know me from TikTok as El Delta, or Lism, or that guy making an Epic the Musical game, which I still am, I promise. Legal stuff has just been slow, and there will be more updates on that soon. For the majority of people who clicked on a video like this, though, you'd probably just know me as one of those names that popped up during the Wisdom Saga livestream release for Epic, and that's because I'm the one who animated the fighting game-looking sections of Little Wolf. I cannot believe that I got the chance to bring this song to life. I had a feeling that it would be my favorite of the saga, and now that all of Wisdom has been released, yeah, I can confidently say it goes the hardest. There is a small chance I'm biased here, since I probably listened through Little Wolf 2 or 300 times while animating for 2 straight weeks, and I'm not kidding about that. So it was definitely familiar, and we do tend to prefer the familiar. But honestly, I think the fact that I'm not tired of it after all of that just goes to show how good the song is. I mean, what are the odds that I got to work on that track out of all of the saga? I guess 1 in 5, but I'm no statistician. Anyway, creating this animatic, though it kind of feels wrong to call it that, I'll explain later, was a wild journey, and I think it would be really cool to give you guys a look at how I made it. It was really fun, but my god, it was not easy. I'm happy with how it turned out, though there are definitely things I wish I had done differently or that I'd had time to add or fix. Lots of successes, lots of regrets, and very few hours of sleep. I learned so much from doing this, and hey, maybe some aspiring animators will learn something from hearing me ramble about the process, so let's dive in. I first heard Epic the same way I imagine a lot of people did, scrolling TikTok when suddenly...
Nah, don't be modest, I know you're a goddess, so let's be honest, you are Athena.
Then humming that tune within earshot of the right friend, they recognize it, go, no way, you listen to Epic, identify you as a fake fan, properly introduce you to the musical, and bam! You're now a proud carrier of epicitis, the fatal disease whose symptoms include earworm infestation, pancake-related heartbreak, and a sudden inability to conceal your annoying musical theater kid side from civilized society. Yeah, that was me. I found Epic just before the release of the Cyclops saga and became obsessed as I followed it through to the release of Underworld. It was during this time that I graduated from university with a Bachelor of Media Studies and a computer science degree. What's media studies, you ask? So did I, and every other person in the 15-student program. Right up to when we graduated with a diploma that misspelt the faculty name. This was a top 3 Canadian university, by the way. It was loosely a creative programming diploma, and I had originally enrolled because I enjoyed digital painting, but I fell in love with the coding and more computational side of giving life to my art. So I took a bunch of traditional computer science courses, enough to earn my programming minor, and I even made a video game with a friend as my final capstone project. She did the art while I handled the programming. The game is called Kindred, and I released it on Steam where you can play it for free, though I don't necessarily suggest it. It definitely feels like an indie dev's first game, and you can tell that it was made in like 6 months. But seeing a game through from inception to release taught me so much about the process that I knew I'd found something I wanted to do as a career. Once Kindred and University were done, I had the idea to make a game based on Epic. I was working on a VR research project with an old prof of mine, but that job wouldn't last forever, and I wanted to find something I was passionate about for my first professional development. So I started releasing TikToks about my ideas to make a game, and the community was just super supportive. At this point, I was in love with the musical, but pretty much oblivious to how much of an audience was already behind it. I hadn't heard of the Discord server, or the channel in that Discord server where people go to ask permission to do things like make a game based on the IP. Whoops. Word of my desire to develop an Epic game did reach the ears of Jorge, the creator of the musical, and someone from his team reached out to talk about how I might properly go about bringing that vision to life. And everybody at Epic has just been so unbelievably helpful and understanding, and I can't thank them enough. Y'all are making my dream come true, and I cannot wait to get started on this game. Anyway, I assume all that is why Jay came to me when he had the idea of Little Wolf being presented as a fighting game. He asked if I could do animatics, and I said, heck yeah. I'd been making these silly little animations about Epic for a bit and was having a lot of fun with it. Then he explained the concept, and I went, oh, this is going to be nothing like those little sketches. He wanted a Street Fighter-y, Mortal Kombat-ish animatic that looks like it had been pulled straight from a video game. Absolutely, I can do that.
Fully colored?
Pff, of course.
Like 2 minutes of footage?
You got it.
And you can do this in 20 days?
Did you say 20 days?
Yep, we need it before the release.
Mm-hmm.
That's doable?
Yes, sir. Now, obviously that's a bit dramatized, but the reason I was nervous when I heard how soon Wisdom would be released is that between the time I was told about the project and when I needed to have it done by, I planned to pack up my entire life and move across Canada to set up a studio for developing the game. I wasn't too scared at first, but I quickly realized just how much effort executing a move like this would be. Between selling everything I couldn't fit in a suitcase, organizing travel, spending sufficient amount of time with friends I would never see again, and getting my place clean enough for the next tenants to move in, I did not have the time that I thought I would. Before I left for Ontario, I used whatever time I could to create concept art and show it to Jay. I wanted to jump right into animating, but had the feeling I would save myself a lot of headaches later on by nailing down the look and feel of his vision first. Thank God I did too. For the most part, we were thinking along the exact same lines, but there were definitely things that needed to be clarified. For example, when I first looked at the concept art Jay had provided of Telemachus, I mistook his shorts for a second tunic thing, kind of like Link's. I'd also originally given Antinous a massive Street Fighter shoulder, which Jay thankfully had me tone down. Once designs were pretty much finalized, I figured it was time to decide how I was actually going to animate everything. I could have gone with frame by frame, but when I looked over the number of different animations and the level of detail we wanted the fully colored characters to sport, well, I thought it could be done, but I didn't feel properly equipped. See, the silly little animations that I'd been doing were just that, silly and little. I could get away with drawing out whatever I needed on my iPad, then bringing those images onto my computer and using editing software to stick it all together, but I had just sold my computer since I couldn't bring it with me when I moved, and an iPad isn't great for creating animations longer than a few seconds. I'd ordered a drawing tablet and all the parts for a new computer, and they were waiting for me in Ontario, but if I waited until the move to start animating, I would definitely never have enough time. So instead of frame by frame, I thought this might be the perfect time to try out a new way of animating: vectors and rigging. Vectors are basically just another way of drawing digitally. Instead of editing the pixels on a canvas, you create paths. These are essentially just math formulas that describe a shape, and then you can use that shape to make the computer do the art for you. Like, yes, I know I could just draw this line, but wouldn't it be fun to set up the points that make up the curve, select the points, make those points into a shape, but a shape with no fill, just strokes, select the shape, tell the computer what image or set of images I want to draw the line with, describe the spacing of those images, whether they should wiggle or boil when things move, choose the color, adjust the width, taper the ends to make it look natural, and boom, we got a line, baby. Now, I know that seems like a lot of work for just a single line, but it was worth it because check this out. It moves! And now we can zoom in as much as we want with no loss of quality since everything is procedurally generated. Rigging is the process of taking a character, like floppy old telekinesis here, and performing a precise medical operation to give him bones. After all, he's gotta have something for antivirus to break. If I connect the art to the bones the right way, I can manipulate those bones to make the character move like a puppet. Animating a character then becomes as simple as telling the bones where to be at specific times and letting the computer interpolate between those times. Infinite quality, infinite frame rate, baby! Now, at this point, I'm on the West Coast still. The beefiest piece of equipment I have is my laptop. It's a decent laptop, but working with vectors and rigs can get computationally expensive real fast. But it's fine, I tell myself. All the intense calculations are done at the end when I render the complicated math into an actual video format. By the time I'm rendering, I'll be in Ontario and have built my new computer and can just do the rendering on there. Right? But I could start on my laptop, so I looked into a software that I'd been thinking of getting anyway for use in animating the game. It's called Moho, and it has a lot of tools that make vector animation easier and faster. It would also let me do some internal scripting to make the animation seem more hand-drawn. I would later decide against that style, but at the time, I thought it would be nice to have my animatic match the hand-drawn look of the other artists. So I decided on Moho over similar programs like Spine or After Effects. All that was left to do was buy the... Oh, good God. So Moho is a little pricey, but hey, it's a one-time purchase, unlike some other software's subscription-based models, and I was already considering it for the game anyway, right? So, as much as it pained me... Okay, it's fine. Just think of it as an investment in your future, Liam, your career. Yeah, that transaction definitely won't keep you up at night. With Moho acquired, and after many hours of staring into the just got new software and must now watch every tutorial ever created for it so I know how to even navigate the freaking interface abyss, I got to work. I thought a good way to introduce myself to the software would be to work on the background. Nice and simple, right? Well, So Moho is cool because although it's mainly geared towards 2D animation, it does have a few 3D capabilities, and I wanted to use that for the background. So I drew up some assets in Procreate, arranged them in Moho, and sent Jorge some sample footage to make sure my depiction of the palace was accurate. Heh. It was not. We went through many back and forth iterations for the setting. Seriously, this is probably what we spent the most time talking about, with me drawing up new assets and adjusting the color or patterns on others. While I had initially pictured Odie's palace as this grand marble structure that looked out over the beaches of Ithaca, Jay had envisioned a more weathered, rough-hewn stone building, and that's what we eventually landed on. I had also drawn up some suitors, and so I threw them in there to give a sense of scale, and Jay noted that this looked like a picture of a flash mob mid-song. I mean, I gotta agree, just look how in sync they are. I finished off the background stuff right as things really started ramping up for the move, and I lost a few days of working time as I had to focus on packing and cleaning and selling. I had to move out of my place a day before my flight, and so my final day in British Columbia was spent at my friend's place, furiously taking the lyrics of Little Wolf and writing out what I wanted to happen at each part. I ran that by Jay, applied the suggestions he made, slept, and had my friend drop me off at the airport. We sang karaoke on the way like we always did in her car, and I will never forget us hitting the final notes of Wouldn't You Like just as the car stopped outside the terminal. At the airport and on the plane, I drew up the reference images that I would use to build the characters in Moho, and once I had made it to my place in Ontario, it started to hit me just how little time I had. 10 days. But it's fine, because now I can build the computer and things will be... No. So my GPU and microphone somehow got delivered to my old address, even though I ordered it with all of the other parts that did make it to Ontario. So now I was left with just my laptop to finish this. Okay. I didn't even bother unpacking. I set up a desk and monitors, just enough for me to start working, and locked myself in a room for a week straight. Wake up, sit, animate for 16 hours, pass out, repeat. I seriously felt like a cave troll, only occasionally emerging to scavenge for food. It was maybe not that healthy. In fact, my watch has a feature where it changes my step goal each day, like lowering it if I don't complete my goal and raising it when I do. And when that week finished, I reached my goal by walking down the driveway to put out the garbage. Yeah, that was sad. But hey, you guys saw the end result. That week paid off, so let's talk about what actually happened in that cave. I started with Telephone, and the first thing to do was trace him out and make him into a series of vectors. It took almost an entire day to create him with all the masked layers and properly blended shadows, but okay, that was mostly due to me learning the software as I went. Then I gave him all his bones, and you might be wondering what these floating bones here are, and to that I say, whoever said your bones have to stay inside your body? You know, it's good to let those bad boys out for some air now and then. To any impressionable children watching this video, that was a joke. Please do not attempt to remove your bones or anybody else's. No, these bones here are used to control things like the turning head or the mouth opening and closing, what expressions he's making. I can basically tie any action to the moving of a bone, though it does take a bit to set up, and that's what the next day was for. Once telecommunications was all rigged up, I moved on to tracing Anthill. It was significantly faster now that I knew my way around the program better. While I had given teleport line work that looked pretty clean and thin, I wanted antibiotics lines to be thicker and scrunglier, a real nasty feel. I gave him the same floating bone treatment as his buddy over here, told the rig how to handle some weird edge cases, ignored some weird edge cases and hoped they wouldn't come up, and chucked the boys into my environment. Then it was time to figure out how to animate them. I decided I would practice animating on the suitors in the background first, since people wouldn't be paying all that much attention to them. That was also the reason I didn't even bother making them out of vectors, or even layers for that matter. Each suitor was just a single dominance asserting PNG that I then used meshes to warp. I created 3 different variations of a cheering animation and a system that would let me swap out the bodies easily. Then I just went through and changed up each suitor's look and movement until I was happy with the overall result. You can probably tell that these were the first things I animated like this because even in the final render they... Help me! Help me! Well, just don't focus on the background too hard. Then it came time to animate the actual fighters. So I started with a series of reusable base animations for each character, like left punch, right punch, kick, idle, getting hit. You know, things I knew that I'd be using repeatedly. Then I put the draft of the Little Wolf song into Moho and used those basic animations to get a loose sense of blocking and timing. When I went to bed that night, I set my laptop to render what I had so far, just to see if there were any problems that needed to be fixed. And I woke up to find it finished and looking pretty decent. That gave me a lot of hope. Now, when I say it looked decent, I mean the quality, because obviously the characters still seem pretty robotic and just stop moving sometimes. You okay there, buddy? So I went through the whole thing and made sure they were always moving and always looked like they had some weight to them. Then I used these bones here to color the characters white or red whenever they got hit or blocked an attack. I realized there would probably need to be some more indication for that kind of thing though, so I went to my iPad to make a frame-by-frame hit effect and a block effect. I also created a heavy swing and a light swing effect, though I didn't end up having time to implement them, which is a real shame because I feel like that might have been the finishing touch this animation really needed. I also asked Jay if he wanted telepathic to get bloody throughout the fight, and he responded with this gif, which that's a yes, I think, right? So I gave him a new bone that would gradually add bruises and blood splatters. I thought I should also have some blood fly from Telescope's face when he got hit. I certainly didn't have time to hand draw all the visuals for that, and the particle effects in Moho are not industry leading, but thankfully I didn't have to bother with any of that. I was able to take some of the splash effects I'd made recently for the El Delta intro, slap a red colorize over them, and there we go. Remember kids, it's okay to plagiarize if you're plagiarizing yourself. So do that. Then there was Athena. I didn't think I had time to animate her the way I had the others, so instead I drew out a handful of poses for her, including separate arms I could rig up, and used bones with point bindings along meshes to allow her a little bit of movement. Then I created a gradient shape that follows her root bone and fades away at the bottom and made it so that she's masked by that shape. This is what gives that fading away effect she has in the final render. And then it was just a matter of timing her movements to the song and her mouth to the lyrics. I did another handful of passes to adjust the character's hands and feet and expressions and made sure the shadows synced up and followed the characters and moved the camera around for more dynamic composition. Dynamic composition? Did I really just say that? Oh, that sounds so pretentious. Whatever, I'm keeping it. I used Premiere Pro to stitch together a starlight particle simulation thing and adjust the colors to match what I had seen in the snippets of other animations I've been provided for Athena's Quick Thought. Then I drew a rough hourglass design and threw both of those in there to create the full Quick Thought effect. Apart from the background environment, this is probably what Jay and I went back and forth on the most. He had a very specific idea of what Athena's power-up visuals were, and though I don't think I was able to exactly capture what he was looking for, I hopefully got close. With only a couple days left, I set everything to render overnight, and when I woke up... Athena, why do you have an extra arm? So things weren't perfect yet, but this was enough of a cut for me to send to Jay so he could start putting together things like the character stills and dialogue and mapping where he would cut to Louisa's animatic halfway through. Side note, how amazing was that animatic? Good God, the lighting, the expressions, I had 3 friends watching the live stream with me, and when this face appeared, my buddy nearly spat his drink all over me. He laughed so hard. Seriously, guys, go check out Louisa and Julesen art. I'm gonna link their stuff in the description. So while Jay put that together, I brought the rough draft video into Adobe After Effects to work on the UI and special effects. I drew up assets for the health bars and round counter, created the text assets that would be needed, timed out all the animations for when they appeared and disappeared, then went through the video frame by frame to lower the health bar whenever Telemarketer got hit, then did the same for Antonym, then went through again to lower the red health bar slowly at a 15 frame delay. It's parts like this where it might honestly have just been easier to program an actual fighting game and let the scripts handle all these minute repetitive UI animations. If I'd been given a full month or two and I hadn't had to move so I had an actual computer, I honestly might have done just that. Once the UI was done, I added in the final effects like fading to white halfway through, fading to black at the end, and having anti-disestablishmentarianism declared the winner. I also felt like the brutal hits were lacking that crunchy, punchy feeling, so I spent a while figuring out how to make a shockwave effect by generating like a circular animation and using that as a displacement map on the footage. Then, with 1 day remaining before my deadline, I returned to Moho and fixed up all the issues of the rough cut. I wasn't sure what was causing Athena's arm to appear in the render when it wasn't supposed to, and it didn't help that Moho's editor was a little buggy when it came to displaying what the render would look like. I mean, look at this nice rendered frame of our good boy televangelist here. Aww. And then look at the absolute nightmare fuel that is the unrendered frame. Yeah, it's hard to predict this stuff. Anyway, instead of relying on toggling the visibility of Athena's arm on the currently referenced body pose, I just went through and manually made it 100% transparent when I needed it gone. That did fix things, but it was a hacky solution, and I hope whatever bug caused that one random instance of broken visibility gets fixed soon. Oh, and this. Moho, please put Telethon's teeth and tongue back into his mouth. I can't look at it anymore. It's very upsetting. So I fixed up all the minor things that I'd noticed in the rough cut, and then decided I probably wanted some motion blur during the slow motion parts of the fight. This was probably my biggest Mistake. See, motion blur works by rendering a character's last few frames and leaving those cool after images that I thought would look awesome for Telefrancais during Quick Thought. Problem is, I was rendering these videos at 4K because there's a lot of detail that I don't want lost, and these renders were already taking upwards of 8 hours. When I tried to render out the final cut at 4K with a motion blur, I woke up after 6 hours and found that the footage wasn't even a third of the way done. See, motion blur is very computationally expensive because each frame it's active, it's basically needing to calculate multiple frames worth of data, so the process is many times longer. I simply wasn't going to make it in time if I let this render continue, so I killed the process, turned off motion blur, and started rendering again. Only this time I had to produce it at 1080p instead of 4K. It was the day before the live stream, and I couldn't afford to give up 8 hours since I still had to stitch this version in with the UI and effects once it was done. I also couldn't use my computer while it was rendering, so that day was just spent pacing around praying nothing would go wrong with this version. Thankfully, when the render finished that evening, nobody seemed to have any extra limbs. That was good, but the loss of quality was certainly noticeable. Still, I had to suck it up and get to work because I had configured the UI and effects to a 4K base footage. Now I was forced to spend a while retargeting things and unfrankensteining it all together to work with the new version. I did. I rendered out that final video, tossed it into a Google Drive, and sent the link to Jay. I was done. Huh. For the first time in a week, I went to bed before 5 a.m., then woke up the next morning and cleaned my room, which had been woefully neglected since I'd arrived. My 3 friends arrived and we set up to watch the live stream. We sang along with the whole show until our poor voices wanted to crawl out of our throats to safety. My mom and dad and sister were all remotely watching as well, which made my heart melt. Oh, I love my family so much. My sister, who's a PhD classics professor, was even sending texts like this during the stream. I mean, I don't see how someone could possibly mispronounce a name that's as simple as crap, one sec. Telefacsimile? Sure, why not? People must be so sick of this bit anyway. And that's how the Little Wolf fighting game animatic came to be. A lot of people have told me that they knew I made this as soon as they saw it. Like, oh, the style is so clearly you. And to those people I say, really? I feel like I've never done anything like this before. And also, are you sure it was the style that tipped you off and not my name at the start of the animation? It has been so cool seeing how other artists in the community interpret this song. And honestly, a lot of their animations I much prefer to mine. Am I happy with what I made? Mostly. I think the non-4K quality was exceedingly apparent during the live stream, but that was my own fault. I got greedy with the motion blur. There are a lot of things I'd do differently if I were given another chance at this, and a lot of things I would have added if I'd had time. I didn't get the chance to do color correction on the final product before shipping it, and as a result, I think the whole thing looks pretty dark and desaturated, especially when the dialogue and stills are on screen. That's something that I've always struggled with in my art. I also really wish I had managed to get the swing effects in there. They were definitely needed to sell the quick movement since I don't have traditional access to smear frames when using rigs. And honestly, I don't think vectors and rigging were the way to go here. I mean, they probably were the best option given my circumstances, but the style clashed pretty hard with the rest of the animatics, and it was definitely apparent that it was my first time using the technique. I mean, just look at this. Or this. If I had used a frame-by-frame approach, the final product would have been less dynamic, but more polished, and I think that trade-off is one I should have made. But, you know, oh well, hindsight is 20/20, and I am genuinely proud of what I made, especially the fact that I did it in the middle of a move. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of Little Wolf and all of the other incredible animatics that we got to see during that live stream. I also want to hear what y'all's reactions were when YouTube decided that Jay was plagiarizing his own music. Me and my friends were freaking out. If you enjoyed this dive into my process, you can let me know with a like or by subscribing to the channel. I'm fresh off the boat from my main platform, TikTok, so it would really help me get situated here for these longer videos. Apparently, America is getting rid of TikTok soon as well, so for a lot of my audience, this might be your only place to see my beautiful shroomy face. If you want to really support me, and especially the development of the epic video game, joining my Fungal Hive Mind on Patreon helps more than you can possibly know. You also get a buttload of awesome perks, like this video, for example, which patrons had access to long before it made it to YouTube. I stream all the time on Twitch as well, whether it be drawing or gaming or what have you, so you should definitely go follow me on there. It's always something different. And you should join my Discord because I love interacting with you guys there. Honestly, just browse the description of this video for all of the Liam-related links you could ever possibly need. And of course, thank you so much for watching this video. Goodbye.